How's life?
All things considered, things are pretty good. How
But
about you?
good. Yeah, I think we were set up to pivot to online pretty well.
Yeah,
Pretty.
it's something that I avoided
Me too.
forever.
Me too.
Part of it was just I didn't think that it was going to be the same kind of experience as
Yeah.
teaching, right? Like you couldn't use your hands, and I was like, oh, you can't see as much,
Yeah.
and I feel like my eyes gotten so much more like tuned in, and I feel like my verbal cueing has gotten so precise.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then I think the other part of it was just like fear, right? Like the fear of going online and going virtual and putting yourself out there is
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. This is scary for me, like just recording this thing, even though nobody has to see it. But for me, it's a huge step. So thank you for
Yeah.
being willing.
No, thank you for asking. It's same, right? I think this is
Yeah.
it's just a muscle that
Yeah.
we have to keep exercising.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're here to talk about semi-privates, which is really interesting that you're thinking about that during this time.
Yeah. It's something that I think I've just really appreciated about how you run Atlas,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been so cool to be in a semi-private and to see it in action. And I think part of like the conversation I'm having with myself too is, after, I've been doing Pilates since '99 and I've been
Mm-hmm.
teaching since 2003, and it's just this conversation I'm having of like, what's the best long-term strategy for our students and also for teachers,
Yeah. Awesome.
right?
Yeah. I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah, and I just kind of keep going back to the idea of like Mr. Pilates ran his studio this way, right? All of the first generation teachers ran their studios like this, and
Well,
it worked.
my impression or the stories that I've heard, and don't quote me, but are that he didn't run them the way we run them. And that's why I've always been one of the reasons why I've gone the route I've gone. My understanding is that you came in, and maybe you've heard these stories or not, that you came in and he gave you 3 or 4 exercises and then he walked away.
Yeah.
And he said, practice these. Okay, so you've heard these stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's different than the way we do it.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
not the
still in
same.
that vein of like empowering people, right, to have more ownership
Yeah,
and jurisdiction over their
yeah,
practice. Where
yeah.
I feel like everything is shifted into this like follow the leader, Simon says,
Yes, yes,
group class based
yes.
scenario, and I just question the long-term validity of that.
Yeah, me too, because I feel like Pilates, the system of Pilates and all the apparatus and the work that we've been given that's not what it is. It's a system. And so I'm right there with you. Like, I think there is room for group classes and room for even teachers who never learn a system and only teach like apparatus class. Like there's a place for that, but one of my personal goals or visions is to not let what we are doing die, and to keep it alive. And yeah, so I think that's what leads us to like this conversation and how to teach semi-privates. And because for me, it is really about empowering the client to take ownership of their workout, and how fruitful and amazing and stimulating that is, of course, for them, but it feeds me as a teacher so much. Like, I don't know if this is true, but I wonder if it's true I wonder if some teachers think, well, if I if I give them all the information and they know everything, then they don't need me anymore. But I have found it's quite the opposite. It's like if you empower someone and you give them information, they come back at least the same amount, but almost always more, because it's so exciting and fun and stimulating, and they change and grow to a place that they don't even realize that was possible.
It's such a rich experience.
And then at the same time, our skill level grows too. And so they never quite, we always have something to offer because we're always at least one step ahead.
Yeah.
I think.
I love it. Well, I sent you an email this morning with a few questions.
Yeah. Which were amazing.
Yeah. Do you want to dive in?
Yeah.
So I think always think perspective is everything, right? So I would love to hear a little bit about, your background and the interwoven with the background of how you teach this way.
Well, I don't know that my background has much to do with it, like my pre-Pilates background, but
Pilates background.
Pilates background.
Yeah.
But it really was the stories, the stories about Joe, the way Joe taught, which I understand is like he even had the rolly cart with all the pictures, and he would say, do this one, this one, this one, this one, and that always, like, I just always would think about that. And then, like, how do you get your client to do that? How does this work? And then another person, there was a teacher named Roxanne Richards, and she still, I believe, teaches for Romana's Pilates, and she would come and help teach some of the seminars at Lori Coleman Brown's studio where I was trained. And I don't remember if Roxanne demonstrated this, but I remember Romana specifically pointing out that Roxanne taught new clients SemiPrivates, like their first lesson, very first lesson, SemiPrivates or duets, and I don't remember exactly. And I remember, and that always stuck with me. And we didn't necessarily practice that. There's so much going on at that studio, and there's so many people being trained, and there were 4-person SemiPrivates, and there's just always a lot of action. So, but that always stuck with me. So in a weird way, that's like the background, like those two ideas just sort of brewing. And then when I had my own studio, I could do whatever I wanted to. So then I did. And it wasn't like anybody was opposed to that. It was just that it didn't come up. And we did teach SemiPrivates. But we didn't teach it to brand new baby people. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
It does answer my question, right? So I think that segues perfectly into like one of my questions, right? Is like, what is the onboarding process look like for a new client to go into a SemiPrivate? What kind of preparation, right, is necessary?
Yeah. So that's where I've spent the most time and effort and energy, is that it's one part like I kind of wrote down it's educating them, like this is what happens here. And so what I do right away is, if there's a client, now we're not at the point, even though that very many of our teachers would teach brand new people SemiPrivates, but we do dabble in that, like 2 brand new bodies SemiPrivates. We're still working towards that, but we'll move people into SemiPrivates after 4 privates. But we lay a foundation right away. So if someone comes in and says, hey, like, I want to do Pilates, it'd be really cool to do it, twice a week. I'm really listening to what they're wanting, and I write it down. Like I say, what are your goals? And then I also keep in mind what we recommend, which is 2 to 3 times a week. So you say, okay, well, do you want to do, really the short answer is it entails asking questions and really listening and then remembering. And I remember by writing it down, and I do keep track of what people tell me on that onboarding. So, you know, all the scenarios are very different, but I'm trying to think of just one example. Like someone will say, oh, well, I'd love to do twice a week, but I really can't afford it. I really can't afford to do 2 privates. But they're like a relatively healthy person with no acute pain. Those are kind of my criteria. Like, do you have chronic pain, you know, or do you have acute injury? And if you don't, we can help you. So that's what I say. I'm very clear. We can help you get into semi-privates. But what's going to happen here, and I show them to see, we have all this different apparatus and we have all these springs, and it's quite dangerous to work on these springs. So along with learning the fundamentals of Pilates and some exercises, you're going to have to learn how to really quickly understand like the safety aspect of working on the apparatus. But we can help you. So I always layer in like, you're going to have to learn a lot, but we can help you. You're going to have to learn a lot. You're going to have to take some responsibility, but we can help you. And we really do. And then we try to figure out according to the person. Like some people can remember stuff. So they don't need help remembering, but they might need help doing something else. And another person can't remember anything. So that might be the help part for that person. It's like remembering, oh yeah, getting ahead of them and reminding them, oh, remember to close the carriage. It's important to close the carriage so that the spring doesn't crash and we don't make a lot of noise. But not only we don't make a lot of noise, but we're demonstrating control. So that's kind of long-winded, but I guess that made me realize that part of it is telling them the reason why, you know, and that takes a lot of effort on the front end of getting, but it pays off because more quickly so what I do is I trade off X amount of exercises for front-loading information about why we're doing things. Not how, not like turn your leg out a little more, cross over a little further, pull your stomach in a little more. Not like how, but the fundamental movements, the fundamental sit here, put your feet here. This is called Pilates stance when your heels are together, toes apart. And then 2 minutes later, that's called Pilates stance because your heels are together and your toes are apart. And then that's called Pilates stance. When your heels are together and your toes apart, your legs are rotating from the hips. So I layer in a lot of like reasons. Yeah, and it does, as you can see, like I'm sort of like, I get like, because it does take like a push of information. But anyway, so a lot of people what my goal is always to never have to tell someone no, they can't do semis because they're not ready, because I have done that. I've gone down that route and I was never quite satisfied with that. But my goal is to make them realize, to have them say out of their mouth, I realize that I'm actually not ready for semi-privates. And, you know, it's happening now, but it took first of all, realizing that I wanted to have that switch happen and then figuring out how to help people come to that on their own rather than me being like, no, you're not ready. You're bad. Your back isn't good enough. You can't remember things, whatever it is, which might be totally true. But to have them be like, here's the expectation. This is what happens. I'm here to help you get there. And then have them be like, oh, I realize that I really do need like 4 or 5 more privates so I can practice this thing that I see that I need. And then I'm so excited then. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's such a different paradigm to be in, right? To empower the client to make that decision versus, disseminate it upon them or something.
Right. And then I'm also just honest about the trajectory. If they're like, well, I can only come once a week, I'm like, that's fine, but it's going to take a lot, I'm just honest with them about what I think. And that's where my experience comes in handy, because I do have a good sense of like how long it might take somebody. Whereas a newer teacher might not have a good sense. They might not know this personality type, this body type, this, you know, they're going to take longer. Or, oh, this body type, this personality type, this, like I might be like, oh yeah, you could probably go up more quickly. And I just try to be gently honest about it.
Do you find that like the structure of the form is super helpful for the semi-private process?
The structure of the form, like the order?
The orders.
Yeah, for sure.
The levels and.
I do. And what I find is I'm going to call it holding people back, but it's not really, because like we were just saying, like you are holding back exercises, but you're not holding back information and, you know, like you're not holding back what's happening in the studio, which is them concentrating and paying attention and learning how to use the apparatus. But you do have to use a lot of restraint as a teacher to not overteach, not only detail, but exercises. Like, because, you know, like for a long time I would be like, okay, I just want to get them up to like intermediate, like so they can do an intermediate mat and an intermediate reformer. And then we have a lot to work with and a lot of, you know, then we can focus on like other things. But then this has been just in the last couple of years, I realized, oh, okay, I'm gonna pare it back and instead teach them basic mat, basic reformer, which is like 5 exercises and I don't know, 6 or 7 exercises, which is a lot considering you're moving a box, you're getting a pull, you're putting a pad, you're adding a spring, you're reaching up, you're rounding, you're like, it's like a huge amount of information, and we want to get on with it. We want to get to the good stuff. Like I've totally felt that way. Like I want to get to the fun stuff. And then slowly I realized, okay, well, that fun stuff's going to come much more fast, and if I take the time to like say, okay, so what I do instead now is basic mat. Even if they can do an intermediate mat, teach them this is the basic mat. Teach them a basic reformer. This is the basic reformer. And then I teach them on the Cadillac, leg springs, arm springs, safe things that are quite safe that they can do on their own, so that I could say, go do the leg springs and walk away and feel confident that this person is not gonna like go flying off the Cadillac or whatever, do some erratic movements that could endanger them or someone else around them. You know, and then the wall, you know, some of the basic stretches like on the ladder barrel and like the arm weight series, magic circle series, these real fundamental things, which we actually do a lot in, you know, mat classes. Because then they have a body of work that they can, like I said, you can walk away from them and they can be left to their own devices, and they're doing something, they're concentrating, they're working out, and they're not in danger. And then the cool thing is if you do Pilates, you get better and stronger, and then you can do more stuff.
Right.
Which is like, wow, what a concept.
So with the structure of it, right? I mean, is it starting, you have 3 people moving, and is each person doing their own thing, or is it kind of like this, you know, community exploration?
I think the short answer is it depends, but that's amazing. Okay, so this is how I practiced teaching semis in a way that, because I think most people could learn or already know how to move people at the same time. Like you're like, okay, you're on the reformer, you're doing footwork, and then you go, okay, now you're gonna everybody stand up, add your black straps, put them there, lie down, and we're all gonna pick our straps up and put them on our feet. Like we can do that. So what I did, it sort of happened by chance because I had a very small space before I opened this space, and like all the apparatus was really next to each other. Like the The Cadillac was right next to the reformer, was right next to the chair, was right next to the high chair. So, I mean, I could just be, and I didn't have a lot of effort. Like, I didn't have 3 reformers. I had 1 reformer and 1 Cadillac. So one person had to be on the reformer and 1 person had to be on the Cadillac. So, but the cool thing was, is I was right there. I was like right there and right there. And so I just started practicing. And part of the beauty of that was I did have a lot of experience. So I had a lot of skills it is like an advanced teaching skill. So I did have a lot of skills to draw on. And and I had willing clients that were already kind of trained. You know, they already knew their exercises. But it was a way that I developed the ability to then take less experienced people and move them around and like have several workouts going on in my mind, like okay, she's gonna do, you know, like the leg springs she's gonna do the intermediate mat on the Cadillac and then do some leg springs, arm springs, and push through bar. And then this person's on the mat and they're gonna do the mat. Oh, they can do the mat together. Oh, they're doing the mat together. Okay, now, you know, that's 20 minutes in. So now we only have, now you're gonna do the leg springs and you're gonna go on the reformer and do the footwork, which are kind of similar. So at first I would put similar types of exercises together so it wasn't too crazy. Like I didn't have someone pulling the pedal up on the Wonder Chair and someone, you know, doing something completely opposite somewhere else. But like footwork and leg springs kind of go together. You know, so, and then it's just a fun game and a puzzle, and there's no right or wrong really. Like except you're just trying to keep them safe, keep them moving, help them learn, help them improve their bodies. But beyond that, like it was just, so now in this, our big space, when we have lots of apparatus and we have 3 Cadillacs and 3 reformers and 2 high bars, I will do that. I will on purpose limit my space. For if I have 3 people, instead of taking all 3 people on the reformer, I'll stick myself in a corner where I'm forced to use the guillotine, the Cadillac, and the high chair because they're in proximity to each other. And then it just helps with the safety part where you don't feel like at Lori's old studio, it was really big and long, and there were a ton of reformers and stuff. And so it was scary to tell your client, go across the room, you know, you want them to go on the Wonder Chair, but it is like way over there. And you're thinking, oh my God, they're gonna pull the pedal up, they're gonna go flying, but I need to be with this client, they're on the reformer and they haven't done this exercise. And it was like, you're like, oh my God. So yeah. The concentrating of the space, so like I see you have 2
wall units.
Like yeah. I would just drag some stuff over near there and not just choose one day like, oh, I'm just going to use this one wall unit and I have drag your Wonder Chair or whatever over and maybe a mat, something else. Or just with 2, obviously it's easier to start with 2 people. And then the other strategy I use is having an established client who I barely have to talk to because we know each other so well, and bring in a brand new client and teach them together.
Wow.
Because the cool thing about that, and you asked about feedback about something else, but the really interesting thing is that the advanced client often will be like, oh, because they get to hear all this stuff over again, like that beginning stuff, that beginning information. And partly it helps them understand how much they know, but it also helps them like refresh that, oh yeah, I don't think about that anymore, or oh, she explained that. Like the way I explained it to that client 10 years ago is going to be really different than the way I explained it to a brand new client now, right? So they get to hear it.
Different teachers.
Yeah, so I get to say it in my more experienced way, and they get to hear it. And then they don't feel like they're getting short shrift because I'm not spending a lot of time with them, because they know, like, they don't need me standing over them while they're doing like their leg springs or whatever. They can just do it. And then I just make sure what I do, my strategy in that situation is make sure I end the brand new person, like at a good, like at 10 till. And then I'll say, you're done. You did a great job. Go to the front desk. This is and then I'll come back and I'll have something in mind special for that advanced client. Be like, okay, I'm going to nail them on this exercise, or we're going to spend some quality time on some specific thing that I know they need. And then not only do you kind of get that moment to share, to make sure that they're okay, make sure you got the connection, but it's also that opportunity that they can give you feedback too. Like, oh, that was really cool. Or that person, wow. And they usually do. If it's one of those clients you've had for 10 years, they're going to feel pretty comfortable sharing. And I'll ask them. I'll say, how was that, or whatever,
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue into my next question, right? Of like, what's the feedback you get from clients, right? I mean, I think it's maybe a compound question of like, what are your experienced clients give you as far as feedback? And then what do clients that are new to you, either new to Pilates or new to this kind of format, like what's the feedback that they give you? Because I think a lot of people that are doing group Pilates are doing that Simon Says, follow the leader thing, right? And this is a really different animal.
Well, this one answer is like, the feedback you get is usually going to be good, so it's not as super useful. And I don't know that repeating a lot of it would be helpful to you, but what I do, because people that don't like it or don't click with what's happening, they're rather than be rude and tell you how much they didn't like it, they're just not going to come back. Right. But so what I do is I do seek out feedback, critical feedback, or feedback from people. If someone doesn't like the new person doesn't like email and it's like, oh, or they leave and they don't book another session or something, I'll reach out to them as the owner and the teacher saying, hey, would you mind sharing, any feedback? And most people will write back. Some people every once in a while get someone who doesn't, but most people will write back, and pleasantly, a lot of times it's like, it's just more like circumstances, like, oh, I'm moving next week, or, oh, it's a lot of times it's that, which makes me feel better, of course. And then other times, they might just give you like good feedback, like specifically, like it's not for them, or they're gonna go try. I'm gonna go try kettlebells or something. They'll give. So that's just good information. And then I also solicit critical feedback from my clients who I have relationships with. And I'll tell them, I'll say, I'm working on this thing, or I'm trying out this thing. Will you give me feedback? And I select those people because I select them not because they're going to give me good feedback, but because I know they understand what I'm looking for. Like, I'm looking to be better, and this is what my goal is. And can you help me can you give me feedback to, and they'll usually, I don't know, you'll probably figure out who those people are pretty easily, or you probably already know, like that client that's honest and kind at the same time.
Yeah. Do you feel that this kind of a model is, and we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, right? But like I just feel like it's the best long-term option or strategy, right? Not only for the client's ownership and practice of the Pilates method, but also for us as teachers, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it is the model I'm using, so it is. I don't know whether it's like better or worse compared to what other people are doing, But as far as what you just said, I agree that as far as like feeding the teacher with inspiration and like being excited about solving the puzzles and coming to work, and for the client, I think that in that way it's sustainable. Like you're going to stick with it. Therefore, it's sustaining whatever, being a teacher or having a studio, because you don't get burned out. Yeah, I totally agree.
So many teachers and studio owners had just reached burnout, and I think there's only so long that you can do the Simon Says way.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I just kind of keep going back to this idea of like, okay, like this model has worked, right? It worked for decades for Mr. Pilates. It, you know, a similar vein, right? Not exactly as loose, right?
Yeah.
But from my understanding, it's how Ramona ran her studio. It's how Kathy Grant ran her studio, Corolla. You know, and it's just interesting to me that at some point, you know, I think I have my personal beliefs of what happened. I think the fitness industry maybe hijacked Pilates a little bit, and with the influx of like group exercise in the 80s, maybe things started to change a little bit, but I don't know. That's my personal belief. I don't know how much of that is exactly true, but I feel like Pilates did, in a sense, get hijacked by the fitness industry, right? And it started to morph and change. But even within the fitness industry at large, you do have venues like CrossFit has elements of doing this a little bit, right? The more classical yoga lineages definitely do something very similar to this, right? So it has worked, it can work. I just think that this conversation is so valuable to jump the hurdle into doing it.
The little add-on to that is that you get a much bigger roster of clients.
Right.
And you're not, you know, you don't have the same clients every week. Like, you know, if you're teaching all privates and your schedule is full, then there's just not a lot of room for change and inspiration. And so when you can add another client into like the and then it just, again, like it's more, I found that then you get more experience because you get to see more bodies too. So you're learning, not only you're learning because you're teaching more bodies, literally more bodies in the and you have a bigger roster, so that, you know, you have your clients who go away in the winter or go away in the summer, then you always have backfill.
Yeah. So where does the semi-private factor into the model of the studio or the model of the business?
It is, I mean, like it. So I have this vision of going back to the way I understand Joe had people. You just came. You didn't even have an appointment, I don't think. I'm not sure. You just came and you did your workout, and there were people supervising Joe or other people, but but I had this idea, like I want that, and I've seen studios try different strategies, and I've tried certain things that just like they just never quite like take. And so I had this idea that to do self workouts, like offer self workouts as a that's what we call them, as an option. And that's really cool. It might sound super scary because you're like, oh my God, but it's exactly what we were talking about before, where the client, even clients that I was like, we're offering this new thing. You could totally come and do, I'm confident that you could come and do a self-workout. They realize they're the ones that say, I'm not ready, which is super cool, because you don't want someone who's not ready for self-workouts to be doing self-workouts because of what could happen. But So we do have clients to do self-workouts, and I do require them to also, they can't only do self-workouts. They have to be regularly, weekly, taking at least one other, not a mat class, but they can take at least one other semi and one other private, or a private, consistently.
Love that.
And, you know, we don't have a lot of people that do it, but that's just because I think it just takes time to develop that skill. But it's cool because then other clients are like, oh, what's that person doing? Where's their teacher? And they're like, oh, they're doing a self-workout. And that's inspiring. Like, oh, I could do that? Yeah, you could do that. Do you know how to do the footwork? What's the footwork? Oh, is that the one where I lay down on the reformer? Where do I put my feet? And then they go, like there's a huge like gap of knowledge. Yeah. But it's also cool because you can go, even if you're like, this person's not going to be able to do self-workouts for like 5 years, but it still inspires you to start teaching them where are their gaps. It helps you see their gaps of knowledge, because it's not just the exercise. It's the exercise plus the safety plus execution plus the rhythm plus the order. And then to me, that's like, oh, that's so cool. I found a fun puzzle piece to play with.
Yeah. And I think it's also just a way that the clients can be so much more engaged and embodied and have ownership of not only themselves, but of the work, right? And I think, as I was kind of thinking about this conversation, right, it had an insight that I think most people, when they exercise, they leave, right? Like they leave the building, right? But what we're asking people to do is to occupy, right? And be so in themselves. It's such a different thing. And I definitely think that's not for everyone, but
no.
But I also think the Pilates client's always a little different too, right? I think we tend to draw people that are, not more intelligent, but use their mind.
Interested
right?
in that, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just a natural draw for Pilates people, right?
Yeah.
They're curious. They're already using their mind. I always think of like the 5 parts of the mind, right?
Yeah.
They're intuitive. They have imagination, right? They're intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun too. Like sometimes I'll play that game like, oh, this person, those 5 parts, like their willpower is like, man, they got a lot of willpower, but they're not using their imagination. Is that one of them?
Yeah.
I would forget the parts. So then I'll be like, hey, the 5, like according to Joe Pilates, there's 5 parts of the mind are the blah, 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 blah. And your willpower is amazing. How about let's work a little bit on your imagination? And then, like you said, the people that tend to come to us are people who are like, yeah, I want to try that. But instead of just trying to tell them, imagine you're on a boat, And those people that they've either not flexed that muscle for a while, or they're like, oh my God, you're being too foo-foo or whatever. But if they think of it like, oh, this is part of Pilates, they just need that little bit of knowledge. Like, oh, this is part of Pilates, and we're also trying to balance these parts. And you can work on it for 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be like the whole time. So that stuff gets me all excited too.
Yeah. What's it like to train the teachers and staff in your studio to teach a semi-private?
It's not easy. I don't know how successful I have been. I'm still working on bridging that or helping that. There's a lot of layers. But my number one goal is to set everyone up for success the best I can, the client and the teacher. So one example of that might be like, I'm not going to give them a kind of a wild one, like an erratic mover. And with a really concentrated mover in a semi-private the first time they teach a semi-private. You know, like you want to try to, often the personalities matter more than the body type or the skill. So that if you can get two sort of more like-minded clients, but like personality type together, it's for a newer teacher to teach them semi-private is easier because they don't feel like they're trying to wrangle and they're fearful that the person's going to hurt themselves or crash through something. Definitely only teaching 2 people at one time. So I will often, we have up to 3 people in our semi-privates, but we won't put a third. Even if there's demand, we won't put a third in the lesson if I think it will throw it off for the teacher or the other clients. And that's just something I'm willing to do because I think in the long term, it's better. And I've even had a single semi, which is not great because the client's paying for a single semi with one teacher, and chosen not to add, like when there's demand and this person's like, oh, can I come for a semi at 6 o'clock on Thursday? And I'm like, I will tell them it's not available. If I think that's going to set the teacher up for failure or the other client up for failure. And so that's just like it's like choosing to take the long vision. Like in the big picture, this is going to be better. Even though in the short term for the business, it's not the best business decision in that moment, but it's just 1 hour, it's not like, and if you can't have that happen constantly, but I will make that choice sometimes. The beginning teachers, it's an advanced teaching skill. Yeah. So it just takes time and they really have to want to do it. That's huge. The teachers who teach the most semi-privates at my studio are the most experienced, and they just, I'm going to say they just do it, but they don't. They work on it, and I do give them tips and ideas, and I do try to set them up for success in that similar way. But part of it is just they had like years of experience, so they just have so many more tools and so much more ability to steer personalities and things. So I'm still definitely working on training teachers. I've thought a lot about, we've dipped our toe into starting to do it in the training. Lori has started to do it. But there's just so much information, and to get them to that finish line, it really is just like a little window, like a day of practicing, doing exactly what we talked about, which is actually keeping people together, because it's a starting point. Like to be able to just stand there and look at 2 bodies and get all the words out and keep them going. Like that's the starting point. And then, because I don't think you could do the 2 different things without being able to do the same thing.
Yeah, you have to start there, right? And then, I totally agree. It's a much more advanced teaching skill. Yeah. So I think teaching group classes is a great place to get experience directing more bodies through space at the same time, and then whittling it down to then being able to formulate 2 workouts. Yeah, it's a lot. Definitely working on that, how to train teachers to do it. That's our next talk. Looking forward to it. Oh, what else?
What else? I don't know.
Yeah. I think you definitely answered all of my questions. But I didn't know if you had anything else that relevant.
I don't know. My question for you is, what made you think of this during the pandemic? Since I presume you don't have a lot of people, maybe just you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's perfect timing, right? Like I think COVID, this whole experience has been so clarifying, right? I mean, it gave me enough negative space to just objectively look at, okay, like what's working,
Oh yeah.
what's not working,
Yeah.
what's pulling my heartstrings, what's not, like what do I need to let go of, right? So
Yeah.
I'm actually like I'm phasing gyrotonic out of my studio, and I love it, but I think for the studio perspective, I think it's gonna be so much better just to have a singular focus.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And it just got me thinking, right? Of like, okay, I've always wanted to start to do this, and now is the time.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like we all get a little bit of like a restart.
Yeah.
Right?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it might feel super scary to do semis because I presume you're wearing masks and staying away, like, but in a weird way, it might be like
the perfect
it's
thing.
the
You can
perfect
distance
thing
people.
they have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
They have to take responsibility for that bar and that spring or whatever. And it can be a really important part of what you're teaching them. And then, yeah, so I don't know. I'm super excited for you.
I'm super excited too. You know, if there was ever a time, it's it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's so many silver linings,
Yeah.
right, to this experience, and it's yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to add, I don't think.
No, that was amazing, Teresa. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. And
Yeah.
and we'll see you on Friday.
See you
Are
on
you in
Friday.
class on Friday? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, cool.
All of the Fridays, and then
Okay, good.
Can I sign up for your Monday class next Monday?
Yeah, for sure. Let me write it down so I don't forget. Cool.
The same way I have Post-its everywhere.
I know. Don't forget.
I know.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Cool.
I'll see you Friday and Monday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing all of this.
No
it's
problem.
amazing to be able to connect while I'm across the states.
It's awesome.
And I can't wait to be back in Seattle.
Cool. Take care.
You too.
Bye.